riferimento Price, 85.
From the transcription studios of the Old Time Radio Network, we present a special broadcast of Twisted History, a true crime chronicle. Tonight, we reach back through 5 centuries to a time when the church wielded the power of empires, and one family dared to claim it as their own. A story of a patriarch who sat on the throne of St. Peter and used it as a throne of sin. A tale of a son carved from marble and malice, and a daughter whose name became synonymous with the most wicked sins of all. This is the shocking, blood-soaked, and endlessly debated story of history's original crime family. This is Poisoned Rain, the shocking true history of the Borgia Family Crimes.
August 11th, 1492. The conclave of cardinals emerges from the Sistine Chapel. White smoke rises. A new pope has been chosen. The announcement echoes through the streets of Rome. Annuntio vobis gaudium magnum, papam habemus. The man who emerges is Rodrigo Borgia. He takes the name Alexander VI. On the surface, it is a moment of supreme religious authority. But beneath the crimson robes and the papal tiara beats the heart of something else entirely. A politician, a dynast, and a man whose appetite for power would never be satisfied. The Borgia family had arrived at the very apex of the known world. What followed would become the stuff of legend. Poisoned rings, clandestine meetings, assassinations ordered from the Vatican itself. The Italian Renaissance was a time of breathtaking art and enlightenment. Michelangelo, Leonardo, Raphael. But it was also an era of brutal realpolitik, and no family played that game more ruthlessly than the Borgias. Tonight, we separate the true crime documentary real stories from the slander, examining court records, contemporary accounts, and the historical evidence behind the sensationalized tales. We will ask, was Lucrezia truly a femme fatale poisoner? Was Cesare the model for Machiavelli's The Prince? And did Pope Alexander VI sell his soul for worldly dominion? To understand the Borgias, you must understand the world that produced them, the late 15th century. The Italian peninsula was not a unified nation, but a patchwork of warring city-states, Milan, Venice, Florence, Naples, and the Papal States. Each was a player in a high-stakes game of alliances, betrayals, and shifting loyalties. This was the Renaissance, the rebirth of classical learning and art. But it was also an age of cynicism. The old certainties of the medieval world had crumbled. In their place rose a new breed of ruler, the prince who ruled by cunning, not by divine right.
It is much safer to be feared than loved, for men have less scruple in offending one who makes himself loved than one who makes himself feared.
Into this cauldron stepped the Borgias. Originally from Spain, they were outsiders in the Italian power structure, and that made them hungry. Rodrigo Borgia had spent decades accumulating wealth and influence as a cardinal. Now, as pope, he wielded the ultimate authority. But for Rodrigo, the papacy was not an end, it was a means. His true goal was to establish a dynasty that would outlast him. And for that, he needed his children. Let us begin with the patriarch. Rodrigo Borgia, born in 1431 in Játiva, Spain. Handsome, intelligent, and utterly ruthless, he rose through the church hierarchy with astonishing speed. By 25, he was a cardinal. By 1492, he was pope. But Rodrigo never pretended to be a man of God. He openly acknowledged his mistress, Vanozza dei Catani, and his children by her, Cesare, Juan, Lucrezia, and Joffre. When he became pope, he appointed his sons to positions of power and used his daughters as pawns in a grand political chess game.
The Church has given me power, but power without legacy is nothing. My children will sit on thrones. My blood will rule Italy.
Rodrigo's papacy was a study in contradiction. He was a patron of the arts, commissioning works from Pinturicchio and opening the Vatican to scholars. He sought to beautify Rome and restore its grandeur. But he was also accused of the most heinous crimes: simony, bribery, and murder. The phrase historical poison became inextricably linked to his name. The Borgias were rumored to possess a secret weapon, cantarella, a tasteless, slow-acting poison that could be slipped into a rival's wine. Whether this poison actually existed or was propaganda from their enemies, the legend took hold. Cardinals who opposed him died suddenly. Wealthy nobles who resisted his demands fell ill. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence, yet proof remained elusive. In the world of Renaissance politics, assassination was an art form, and the Borgias were its masters. If Rodrigo was the architect of the Borgia ambition, his son Cesare was the sword. Born in 1475, Cesare was handsome, charismatic, and terrifying. He was originally destined for the church, made a cardinal at just 18, but his soul belonged to the battlefield. After his brother Juan was mysteriously murdered, possibly on Cesare's orders, Cesare shed his cardinal's robes for armor. He became the captain general of the papal armies, and he set about carving a state for himself in the Romagna region of Italy. Cesare's campaigns were brutal and efficient. He conquered city after city, employing treachery as often as force. He would invite his enemies to peace talks, and then have them strangled.
Trust is a weakness. I prefer certainty. If a man can be useful to me alive, I keep him. If he becomes a threat, I remove him. It is simple mathematics.
His most infamous act came in 1502 at the town of Senigallia. He invited several rival condottieri, mercenary captains, to a banquet, ostensibly to reconcile. Instead, he had them seized and executed. The event sent shock waves through Italy. No one was safe. No promise was binding. Niccolo Machiavelli, the great political philosopher, was an eyewitness to Cesare's methods. He would later use Cesare as the model for his book, The Prince, the archetype of the ruthless, effective ruler who understood that politics and morality were separate spheres. In the annals of medieval crime and Renaissance brutality, Cesare Borgia stands as a singular figure. He was not merely violent, he was strategic. He understood that terror was a tool, and he wielded it with precision. And then there was Lucrezia. Born in 1480, she became the most famous and most maligned woman of the Renaissance. Her name has become synonymous with poison, incest, and depravity. But how much of that is true? Lucrezia was her father's favorite. Rodrigo doted on her, and she was educated alongside the brightest minds of the age. She spoke multiple languages, played the lute, and could discuss philosophy with scholars. But she was also a pawn. At 13, she was married off to Giovanni Sforza, a member of a powerful Milanese family. When the Sforzas became politically inconvenient, Rodrigo had the marriage annulled on the dubious grounds that it was never consummated. Giovanni, humiliated, fled for his life, spreading rumors that the Borgias had tried to poison him. Lucrezia's second marriage to Alfonso of Aragon ended in tragedy. Alfonso was murdered, strangled in the Vatican, almost certainly on Cesare's orders. Lucrezia was devastated. She had genuinely loved him.
They took him from me. My brother, my own blood, tore my heart from my chest, and I could do nothing. I am nothing but a piece on their board.
It is after this that the darkest rumors began. Her enemies whispered that she had an incestuous relationship with her father and brother, that she wore a hollow ring filled with poison to dispatch her enemies, that she laughed while men died. But modern historians question these accounts. The Lucrezia Borgia crimes narrative was largely created by her family's political enemies, the Della Rovere and Sforza families, who had every reason to blacken the Borgia name. In an age when women had no power, attacking a family through its female members was a common tactic. The 2024 documentary, The Pope's Daughter, Lucrezia Borgia, and the ORF documentary, Die Tochter des Papstes, have recently re-examined the evidence, suggesting a more nuanced picture. Lucrezia, in her final years as Duchess of Ferrara, proved to be a capable and respected ruler. When she died at 39 in childbirth, her husband was inconsolable, hardly the reaction of a man married to a monster. If this were a modern true crime documentary, we would have forensic evidence, DNA, and police files. But this is the 15th century. The investigation into the Borgias' crimes was conducted not by detectives, but by historians, diplomats, and political enemies. The primary sources are deeply flawed. On one side, we have the official Vatican records, which naturally sought to present the papacy in a favorable light. On the other, we have the writings of their enemies, men like Johann Burchard, the papal master of ceremonies, whose diary reveled in salacious details.
I record what I see with my own eyes. The banquets, the dancers, the improprieties. The Holy Father does not always conduct himself as a man of God. But who am I to judge? I only write what transpires.
Burchard's diary is the source of many of the most lurid tales. The infamous Banquet of the Chestnuts, where courtesans allegedly danced for the Pope's entertainment. But historians debate its accuracy. Burchard was a German in an Italian court, an outsider who may have exaggerated for effect. The fatal flaw in any investigation of the Borgias is the impossibility of separating fact from propaganda. The family's enemies controlled the narrative after their downfall. The subsequent Pope, Julius II, a Della Rovere and a sworn enemy of the Borgias, waged a propaganda war against them. It was he who commissioned Raphael's frescoes in the Vatican, deliberately omitting any mention of his predecessors. We are left with fragments, diplomatic dispatches from ambassadors, court records, letters, and chronicles. Piecing together the truth is like assembling a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Every empire crumbles. The Borgia reign ended not with a trial, but with a twist of fate. In August 1503, Pope Alexander VI and Cesare dined with Cardinal Adriano da Corneto. Shortly thereafter, both fell violently ill. The Pope never recovered. He died on August 18, 1503, after days of agony. The cause, historians debate. Poison intended for someone else? Malaria, which swept through Rome that summer? Or divine retribution, as his enemies claimed? With Rodrigo dead, Cesare's power evaporated. He was trapped in Rome as a new pope, his enemy, Julius II, took the throne. Cesare was arrested, escaped, and fled to Spain, where he died in a minor skirmish at the age of 31. The sword that had conquered half of Italy was felled by a random spear. Lucrezia outlived them both, ruling Ferrara with intelligence and grace until her death in 1519. She was buried with honors, her tomb inscribed simply, Lucrezia Borgia, daughter of Pope Alexander VI, Duchess of Ferrara. No mention of poison, no mention of scandal. Just a woman finally at peace. The Borgia family had risen from Spanish nobility to the throne of St. Peter and fallen back into history within a single generation. Their legacy is a paradox. They were both patrons of the Renaissance and perpetrators of its darkest crimes. They funded artists and murdered rivals. They sought to build a dynasty and watched it crumble. In the centuries since, they have become archetypes. Cesare is the model of the ruthless prince. Lucrezia is the archetypal femme fatale. Rodrigo is the corrupt pope, the embodiment of everything wrong with the Renaissance church. But as we have seen, the truth is more complicated. This has been Twisted History, True Crime Radio. If this journey into the heart of Renaissance darkness gripped you, ensure you're subscribed to our frequency. Next week, we leave the palaces of Rome for the open sea to investigate a mystery that has baffled historians for centuries. The mystery of the Mary Celeste, maritime crime, and the abandoned ghost ship. And for stories where fame and crime collide in the modern era, tune your dial to our main network, the Celebrity True Crime Channel. I want your verdict. Was Lucrezia a victim of propaganda or a willing participant in her family's crimes? Was Cesare a visionary prince or a sociopathic killer? Drop your theories below.
Until next time, remember, history isn't just written by the victors. Sometimes it's written by the survivors. And the survivors always have their own story to tell. Thanks for listening. And don't forget, hit that like and subscribe button because you don't want to miss any of these true crime stories on YouTube.